Okay, so I am here with Ember Hill, who is just absolutely killing it in the spiritual world and bringing that to people who need it most. So I'm very excited to talk to you today about what your journey has been like. And as you know, I'm trying to find an area where my services can be of help for light worker practitioners, who are trying to connect with clients, and then clients who are going through spiritual awakening or, going in that path and that journey, their life journey, and trying to match them up. So that's the goal. And I just don't know where that's going to lead, but I'm interested to hear about your experience. So we'll kind of start from the spiritual seeker side of things and your like spiritual awakening journey and what that's looked like, and like how it compares to maybe how you were raised, if that's any different. So the first question I have for you is, think back to the moment when you first realized you were going through a spiritual awakening. What were you feeling, and what was the first thing you did after that realization? And also, as part of that, if there were moments, multiple moments of that, what did that look like?
Yeah, I find this a super interesting question because I think everyone really kind of has their own definition of what spiritual awakening really means and really looks like. And as I was kind of sitting with this concept, I was like, honestly, my whole life path feels like it's been a spiritual awakening in some form or another. I did not grow up religious or spiritual. My sister and I were never baptized. Both of my parents decided that they came from different backgrounds and they wanted us both to kind of just be open and be able to explore and find what really resonated with us. But because of that, we had really nothing structural spiritually, and like nothing larger to connect to. And even from a younger age, like preteen, teen age, I could definitely see a lot of um, a lot of ways that I took issue with organized religion.
Mm.
Some more than others, and some were obviously a lot more prevalent growing up in like a Western society culture, so like very Christianity based. But I always had like some inkling towards spiritual, whether it was like when I was little and my mom said that I was communing with spirits that have crossed over, or when I was kind of more of a preteen and was like going through like starting into my witchy phase and getting into tarot and starting to learn all of that. But then I, kind of grew into working for corporate and I kind of lost touch with that. And so I think what was really the catalyst of the kind of most recent reconnection to that awakening and to that spiritual moment was really COVID for me.
Mm.
Um, we, like everyone else, moved to a work from home model, and I was working on a really big project when I was working in corporate finance, that was just beyond stressful. I was having a lot of health concerns at the same time, and everything kind of just came crashing down after like a year or so into the COVID lockdowns. I ended up going on sick leave and was just like really grasping at anything that could kind of help me where I was at with both my physical and mental health.
Right.
Um, it was very challenged, like I'm sure a lot of people going through a global pandemic. So that was kind of part of it. And that led me to meditation teacher training, actually. So I started to get back into a meditation practice, and through meditation, really started connecting to that like bigger picture, greater purpose. Was realizing that really just incorporating spirituality was helping my mood, my mental health, my physical symptoms were starting to shift from there. And around that same time too, as I was really trying to play with some things to better manage my mental health and was having just absolutely terrible reactions to anything pharmaceutical,
Mhm.
um, I also went through the process of microdosing psilocybin, and all of that kind of happening around the same time
Yeah.
was was absolutely a huge catalyst. And that was also kind of the moment that I realized, oh, I don't want to be working in corporate finance. Like, I want to do something in this direction of healing or self-discovery, or something within the spiritual realm. And that's kind of where I started the path more as that worker in those spaces.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love like the fact that you were raised to be open to things, because I've heard from a lot of people about being raised in that strict Christianity, or whatever it is, and then like some kind of breaking free from that. So I love that you were raised with an openness. However, I guess maybe that was some limiting there as well, because you didn't have a strong connection to something specifically. And then also about, the dark night of the soul, going through that point of physical sickness, and I mean emotional, because you were working for corporate and realizing that this is not it. And just having that realization that this is not the path for me. And so I wonder, at that point where you realized, okay, I'm going to take a different path here. Like I'm going to actively lead toward this path, meditation and healing in that way, versus kind of what I'm told is the right path. What did you then do? Like, did you seek out resources in some way to kind of, like, I don't know, develop your skills, or practitioners, or like, what did that look like once you kind of said, okay, I'm taking a different direction here?
Yeah, I think I bought every course that I could possibly get my hands on.
Yeah, yeah.
As one thing. I was lucky enough to know a couple of practitioners that kind of worked in the space. My ex-partner, actually, one of his sisters, started out as a Reiki healer and then went through to do more energy work. So I was able to kind of work with her in terms of like my own healing journey, and like get a view on what that kind of looked like and the different modalities that she was playing with. And we maintained a relationship. So that was really nice to kind of have. But yeah, I took meditation teacher training. I did my first 100 hours, and then 200-hour course followed like really quickly after that.
Mm.
Um, what else? I did my Reiki training, all 3 levels, pretty quickly after that as well. And then really started kind of playing and practicing with those 2 modalities to begin with. And then the other piece that I didn't really intend to be a kind of a pathway into the spiritual, but it kind of ended up being that way, was actually a group container that I joined that was really at the time focused on healing from patriarchy in particular.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and it was run by Dr. Valerie Rain and her partner, Jeffrey Tambor. And they have just this vast amount of knowledge that they brought in and brought together. And Jeffrey in particular was very well versed in a lot of different energy work traditions. And Dr. Valerie had the kind of more like structured view. She was a practicing psychologist, I believe. So she had that kind of more therapeutic kind of background and structure. So those kind of energies combined was hugely helpful as well. And them kind of walking a group of us through healing and really reconnecting with our bodies and healing a lot of nervous system type things through somatic work, and just that deep dive exploration. That was a really huge part of my journey too, and part of my learnings. And I'm fortunate enough to still be working with them, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, and have deepened my connection with having both of them as my mentors. And that's been super helpful as well.
That's amazing. Okay, so when you found the, because okay, the first people that you found for the Reiki that was someone that you knew, someone in your circle. The meditation teaching, was that someone in your circle also? Okay, so
No.
talk to me about like how you found practitioners to guide you and like what that search was like. Did you do like lots of research on the people or because let me leave it at that. And then how did you know you wanted to work with them?
Cool. That's actually a really funny question in a way, because I definitely am the person who has a tendency to like deep dive and do a ton of research. Because of the state of the world, the meditation teacher training that I took, it was like $10 or something like that, the entire course. So I actually did not do a huge like deep dive and invest a whole ton of time into researching. Um, it was a new kind of startup, and the school that I went through was online based, obviously, because everything was locked down. But now they've grown to like, I think, tens of thousands of students at
Wow.
this point. Yeah, and connecting with the teacher Nikolai, and just understanding his background, I felt very aligned. So when I was in it, it felt like a really good fit, and was very connected. But yeah, that was really outside of the kind of typical way I go about doing things. And it was such a small monetary investment that I was like, even if this isn't something that I choose to do as a career, I'm going to get something personally out of this and, build my own meditation habit with it. So I was
Right.
like, it's really the best way to go. And it
Yeah.
was kind of a similar story for actually the Reiki training too. It was all online based as well because of the lockdown. And I found a really great deal through my teacher, Lisa Powers. And it was all online, like pre-recorded based
Mhm.
for most of it, other than like actually me receiving my attunement. Um, so yeah, that both of them were very just like they popped up in my awareness. I don't know. They were on my algorithm somewhere,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Those
it was,
doggone algorithms.
yeah. It got me, and yeah, that's kind of how I went into it from there.
Okay, gosh, that's really cool. Okay, so and you mentioned a point that I kind of thinking I want to talk about too, and that is like virtual work, even though this is energy work, can be still massively transformational. But do you have any kind of opinion on that as to whether or not you feel things are stronger in person versus virtual? What's your opinion there?
Yeah, so I am a big proponent lover for the distance work. That is 99% of the work that I do is distant because I now live in a very rural space and don't have anywhere to actually work with clients one-on-one directly. Um, Personally, for me, I think the effectiveness is the same. I think it's based on preference for both the practitioner and the person receiving the treatment. Um, I have had every single person that I've done distance work on be like, holy crap, I cannot believe how much I could feel given that,
Yeah.
we're so far apart, type thing. So like there's no question in my heart that it it is boundless in terms of distance, and that it has the same efficacy and same power as doing it in person. Um, for someone who is like super sensitive to other people's energies and, like very highly in tune with that, I actually find that the distance work for me feels a lot better,
Mhm.
because when there's something that's like really large and that I like feel as like pain sensations or like comes through as something that's really uncomfortable, even if it's only there for, a moment until I kind of check in with the sensation, and I'm like, okay, if this isn't mine, like I've received the message, like we can go ahead and get rid of that from my feeling state now. Thank you.
Yes.
But that in person, I feel would be a little more detrimental, not necessarily more intense because I'm right there with the person, although possibly maybe, but I feel like it just gives me the space to kind of practice in a way that ensures that everyone is super comfortable and that everyone's kind of receiving the best possible thing.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I think what you said at the beginning of your answer about like, it is what it's supposed to be for each individual person. So if someone, feels like they need the in-person, connection, then that's what they would seek out, and then your clients are going to be the people who are maybe more comfortable in their own space, and reaching out to you so that they don't have to necessarily come to you, even if they are in the same town. Some people just prefer to stay in their own space, in the comfort of their own home. So it's gotta go with the flow there with whatever is more convenient and feels more appropriate. And then yes, being a highly sensitive empath and picking up on the energies of people, I could see where having that like not really a barrier, but just like kind of like a film, I guess, between you and the client is helpful, because it just has a little tiny bit of separation that helps you identify what's yours versus what's theirs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, I am going to ask you about like if there was ever a time where you tried to seek out a practitioner or a guide or resource and you just kind of had any kind of challenges with that. Like, was there ever a time where maybe you tried to find a practitioner and you're like, this person is just really not it? Or like, did you ever have an experience where you're like, our energy is off and I cannot hire this person to help me, that kind of thing? Were there any challenges along the way, or did it kind of just flow and the right people came to you at the right time?
I think for the most part, it's really been a really great alignment of energies, both from myself as like a practitioner working with clients and myself as a client working with other practitioners. I don't think there's ever been really these big moments of like, oh, this is not going to go well, or this isn't gonna vibe. I think I set pretty strong energetic boundaries in terms of
Okay.
who I kind of both attract and am attracted to. So, not to say that it won't happen, but I think up until this point, I've been very lucky with that.
I need to hear more about this. for my own for my own benefit. We'll talk offline about that and setting boundaries and attracting the right people, because I feel like occasionally I get people who are there to teach me lessons, and it's a good thing too. It's like, well, okay, lesson learned, and now I'm going to move on. Anyway, all right. So I do want to ask you, like, what do you look for in practitioners or in resources that they're in alignment with you? Are there specific things that they need to embody, or what makes you know that you want to work with someone?
Yeah. I really think that it's the relationship that's built up over time. So very rarely will I find a practitioner or somebody that I want to work with that, like I've just stumbled across them and I go ahead and book a session. Usually my process looks more like, okay, like let's follow them on social and let's start to see like some of their content. And I feel this is so important for me, particularly in this like spiritual space that tends to overlap with a little bit of, the new agey type thing. Um, there's a lot of people that I am not value aligned with in those spaces. There's people that I'm not value aligned with in the spirituality space on its own as well. But I think because I am somebody that holds such strong values in terms of the way that I see the world and um, really just collective liberation, that I want practitioners that I work with to kind of hold those same values.
Okay.
Um, and that really is most important. So really my research phase working with practitioners tends to be fairly long because I'll usually follow them on social for a while and really get a sense of who they are as a person before I decide to work with them, especially if I'm letting them work on work with my own energy. I'm
Right.
just very, very protective of that now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you ever, because you do your own research on socials and things like that, do you ever take word of mouth, referrals, into account, or like testimonies, is that part of the research as well?
Yeah, I would say word of mouth for sure. If somebody that, I know and trust has worked with them or has good things to say about this person, then obviously that's something that I take with a lot of weight, a lot of merit for depending on, who's saying it, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But yeah, and or like if it's a practitioner that maybe another teacher of mine has recommended, or another practitioner, like a chain of practitioner recommendation type thing, then I'm happy to kind of put that into the mix and really not just leave it up to social, because I know not everyone posts on social. It just feels like a really good way to get to know somebody that you're maybe not necessarily going to physically connect with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in this like whole concept of being on social versus not is so big because
Yeah.
there are so many light workers who, are just really kind of turned off by it. And so, like, I'm trying to do this for everyone, not just the people who are out there and have a following and things like that. I wonder if you have any opinions on kind of how it would look for a practitioner who, is not on socials. I mean, it seems like it's kind of more like a word of mouth type thing, or like a local kind of practice more
Yeah.
so versus, yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely local, especially if there's like a strong community element, and word of mouth for really anyone who's not on social. That's honestly been a huge back and forth struggle of mine, because some days I'm just like, I hate this. I don't want to have to post about what I'm doing. Like, I'd rather just actually do the work.
Yep. Yep.
And
Absolutely. Sometimes it can feel like a chore. Yeah.
absolutely. I think for me, I've slowly started to shift my I don't know if relationship is the right word, but my relationship with social media in terms of my own like self-imposed expectations. I like anyone who's kind of starting a business, I fell into that, like, oh, you got to post this many times a day and you got to do this. You got like all the very prescriptive bullshit stuff that
Yeah.
we're told that we need to do to be relevant and to get seen by daddy algorithm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've shifted out of that and really just follow the energy. When there's something that feels really alive for me, that feels like it's creating a lot of emotion, whether that emotion is rage or excitement or anything in between, I share it. And I really am now trying to just look at social not as much as this is where I'm going to like extract clients from, because that feels really gross to me. It feels super bro markety. And really just have social be a place where I connect with like-minded people in community. And if those people then build trust in me and want to work with me, then that's awesome. And I'm going to keep sharing about the things that I'm doing, because those are always going to excite me too. So in the process, I'm, technically posting that from like a sales perspective without really having to feel like I'm doing a ton of marketing.
Yes. I want to give you snaps
Yeah.
because that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, I'm not going to post because I'm told that, there's this schedule of posting that I need to do in order to, reach a wider audience. No, that's not authentic to me. And so I'm not going to fit that mold that somebody else created, so Yeah, absolutely. But it is, it's hard not to, because you are like, well, I want to reach as many people as I can. And so there's definitely like a balance there. But you did mention something a couple of times in your response that I want to tap a little bit deeper into. You mentioned community a few times. So you mentioned it in reference to local practitioners who don't necessarily have a wide audience and who are working kind of more one-on-one and like building their community. And then you mentioned it here recently with your own community of like what you're building on socials and attracting the people that are meant to come to you. I guess I would say in an ideal world, what would community look like for this spiritual world, both in terms of the spiritual seeker who's like looking for help along their spiritual journey, as well as for the light worker practitioner?
Um, yeah, ideal world of community. I mean, honestly, if there was a way to do away with algorithms, in like an online type community space, this would be um super ideal, because then you're not subject to somebody else's thoughts on who should get the most views and what is popular. um so that would be one aspect. I think aside from that, a really kind of deeply rooted set of shared and aligned values feels important for a community aspect like that. I'm thinking of a couple of examples of like Facebook groups that I'm in that have a um, super strong set of community-based value rules that
Yeah.
are like, and the people that manage those groups that hold them very much too. And I mean, for reference, the one specific one that I'm thinking of is based on someone's business. So it is very much like they want to constrain everything to ensure that the people who are posting and sharing in community are referencing their work. And it's not just this whole like big, kind of free for all.
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Because it would become that.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. But having a community space where everyone is kind of aligned and has this like shared goal or these shared values, I think really influences the space into what it needs to be as well. So that being an element of this kind of perfect vision community world would also be really helpful. Yeah, other than that, I don't know. I don't know that the platform for it really even exists. I think that would have to be a whole other creation. And just ways that you can meaningfully connect with other people. I think the other thing that really seems to be lacking sometimes in some of the online spaces is it really feels like everyone's out doing things just for themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you can relate to this, but like on social, I still get it to this day, like where I have people come and comment on my posts that maybe had a hashtag in common with what their business is.
Yeah.
And they're kind of coming in and trying to, build a little bit of rapport in that way. And it feels very like it's done with a lot of intention towards building their business versus actually from a heart-centered space about caring for somebody else.
Mhm.
Uh, so that being, I mean, I think that kind of falls into like the values or like
Yeah.
everyone being aligned, but really it being a space where you're not just trying to get something out of it, and you're in it because you genuinely care, whether it is genuinely care about other people that are in the group, genuinely care about sharing whatever knowledge and wisdom that you have. Yeah, that type of thing. I think ideally it would be like a Reddit type space, because
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of cool community there, but Reddit's gone like a little dark and
It's
south, and
and it's a little wily.
it can get a little wily. There are a few like really cool subs that like have some of the best energy that I've ever seen there. So it
Okay.
would be it would be like that, but I
Yeah.
think it would take a lot of pretty strong moderation of maintaining that space.
Yes. Yes. So, okay. So I have to tell you, as you were talking about the connection and, heart to heart and like, not posting things just for ourselves and actually trying to connect, my heart was like literally exploding as you were saying that. So, I absolutely 100% agree with you on those points. And I'm thinking too, like, yes, the rules and the values, what, in your opinion, would those values look like?
I have a lot of opinions on this, so
Good, good.
um, uh, I've been doing a lot of work that really all points to collective liberation, whether that is like the unlearning of all of the shit that we learned growing up in Western society, that like kind of plays into that larger frame of that decolonization and all of the oppressive systems that fall underneath that. Um, like literally all of the isms. I don't know. I could probably list off like 10, and there'd still be more that I miss, but all of the ways that people have been oppressed and their values have not been upheld throughout the entire world. I think anything kind of that streams into that would be like the biggest, most important value for me, because it really feels like that for me, that is what spirituality is leading to. I'm so funny because I've been drafting the Substack post exactly on this
Oh, good.
topic.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read it.
But yeah, I take a lot of issue with the whole personal enlightenment concept, um, from a couple of different angles. I really think that everything, all of the work that we kind of do, all of this healing that we're doing for ourselves is really for the greater good of everyone else and for that collective liberation. So I think, yeah, to tie it up nicely, that's the most important value.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I love the term collective liberation. I haven't heard it put that way. What I've typically heard is unity consciousness. And so, obviously knowing that we are all one and that we should be uplifting every single one, every single plant, animal, everything, it's all one. And yeah, but I never thought of it in the terms of colonization and liberation from the way that, our ancestors kind of formed this pattern for us. Yeah, so I love that stance.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna think on that some more.
yeah, yeah, that part feels really important to me because I think otherwise you can easily end up in the camp of like doing all of this spiritual enlightenment work, and then you just become detached from what is actually happening in the world.
Yeah,
And yeah, I personally don't feel like I am free until everyone else is,
everyone. Yeah,
because like you said, we are all one, we're all connected. So if there's people suffering, you know down the street or on the other side of the world, and I'm in bliss because I have just detached and I'm meditating 24/7, like what good am I doing?
yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. And that, I mean, that's a great point. And I think like what you are doing, if you are in that boat of like meditating 24/7 and you're in bliss, is that you are by your energy alone putting out, higher vibes, I guess, if you will. So, I mean, in some way you're helping, but I see what your point is of like you're not really like fully out there helping because you're just like focused on your own bliss
Yeah,
instead of like the collective consciousness. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think the lines can get a little blurry there, and I think it's really about the intention. I with To your point, with a lot of my meditation and a lot of work that generates energy, I like to dedicate that beneficial energy back to the collective, back out into the world. But some people might just, want to hoard that for themselves, or don't think about, what happens to all that beneficial energy that you create. And maybe it just sits there because there's no intention about where it where it goes from there. And yeah, the detached part from the reality, because we live in, unfortunately, consensus physical reality, so we have to consider that too. It's all part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I did just want to, since we were over half hour into it, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit to the Lightworker practitioner side of things and what your experience has been like once you did make that decision to go full out and say no to corporate world and yes to yourself. So tell me about that transition period. How long ago was it? What kind of experiences did you have, and what kind of challenges have you faced?
Yeah, so 2021 is when I left my corporate job. It was kind of somewhere between January and like the middle of the year, because I was off a little bit for a leave, and then I ended up going back um, part-time just for a short stint. But it was in that time that I was off that I made the decision that I didn't want to go back. And actually, at that time, my desire and my plan that I was moving towards was actually pursuing art full time.
Ooh.
So I actually kind of started and kicked off with that, even though I had been doing my meditation teacher training and my Reiki training kind of in the background. My plan at that point wasn't to use it to move forward into a healing type business. It was really just to use for myself.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. And then somewhere along the way, the hobby that I had cultivated for years and something that I love doing, art as a business, became not fun anymore. And
Oh, okay.
I was then in this place of, okay, I have this like very small part-time, really scale art business. And I'm not finding that art is fun. So I like lost a whole ton of, my inspiration for creating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and realized that I probably needed to pivot, because I didn't see how it was going to work. So at that point, I was probably certified as a meditation teacher and at least a level 1 or 2 Reiki, if not the full teacher master certification. So I think from there, I don't remember super clearly, to be honest, how like that transition looked, but it definitely felt like it was something that was more in line than where I was kind of heading. And it was skills that I was building, it was tools that I was working with. I saw how both meditation and Reiki were improving my daily life, all of my physical symptoms, and how I was shifting my relationship to kind of the mental distress that I was feeling, and really untangling a lot of that as well. So that was kind of the space. And I think because of where I came from with the art background, when I originally kind of conceptualized doing this as a business, my goals were to actually work more so with artists and
Oh,
um,
okay. A
and
very specific target audience. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very niche. So the business that I kind of conceptualized was creatively well, and it was kind of creative, spiritual, kind of mystical type solutions for artists and creatives, and like small entrepreneurs or small business owners.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I don't know, at some point I got bored with that and followed the energy even further, and gained a little bit more clarity on what I felt like my larger mission was, and switched from that lens to rebranding to the unseen realm, and really working with kind of all of those unseen forces
Yeah.
uh, in life. And at this point, it's kind of evolved to really focusing on conscious self-discovery. And that kind of seems to be where everything ties back into for me. Whether that be through like actual like doing the inner work, whether that be through like work in the Akashic records or working with tarot, or even like meditation. Obviously, a lot of inner wisdom comes up through seated meditation, really any meditation. And even energy work started to feel like this level of conscious self-discovery, and I was learning more about myself as I was, working energetically with myself and kind of untangling all of that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm presently at, and I forgot your question, so I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That gives me the picture of kind of how it evolved. And, so conscious self-discovery, and then tying back to, the universal liberation, I guess. It's like conscious self-discovery for the individual so that they can then provide whatever it is, to the world that they need to provide, whatever their gifts are, and to become fully self-actualized in order to be fully present in the world in the way that they can most benefit others. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I love that. Okay. And so unseen realm. So you're basically saying, okay, we're going to tap into all of the elements that are not in this 3D, kind of physical world, and see how those elements can develop whatever it is that you need to develop.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other kind of shade of the unseen realm and the unseen pieces too is also really, I've always had a fascination for really anything that's taboo. So I like exploring the kind of more taboo topics. I actually did some death care training, some death doula training. So got a lot closer with that kind of aspect, because I know that's something that's especially frightening to Western cultured folks, because death is so sanitized here.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, basically anything kind of taboo, unseen, and really all leading towards that conscious self-discovery to further support collective liberation.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm just like, okay, what is your human design element? Because you got the rebellious nature, or like, what's your aura? Because, I have that sometimes too, where I'm like, you said to do it that way. No, I want to do it this way, like, I just want to break the system. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I'm a manifester in human design. I think it actually
Okay.
it's very aligned.
Okay, yeah, I'm a projector. So you get the things to just happen, and I'm like putting the pieces together. So yeah, very cool. Um, okay, I guess let's talk about what elements of creating this business, and you feel like, I guess you're probably stepping into your purpose work, right? You're like getting the clarity of what it's supposed to be. But I'm sure there were challenges along the way. So let's speak about what challenges you faced in getting clients, or have you just really gone with the flow and like whatever happens, happens? I mean, maybe you're at that place, which would be beautiful.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I'm in a very fortunate and privileged position. I want to start with that. When my partner and I moved out here, it gave me not only the flexibility to quit my job, and not have a six-figure corporate income, um, but it gave me the flexibility to kind of start to build this business. And very fortunately, as at some point while we were out here, my partner's disability was approved. So he now has a consistent income, albeit it's not much. It doesn't, it's not expansive for us in any means, but it covers our basic necessities. And so with that privilege, it's given me a lot of space.
Mm,
It's given me a lot of room to really just play with things, to experiment, which is very my line one in human design.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and just kind of play with things. And that has been immensely helpful. I have definitely put the pressure on myself in terms of, wanting a certain size business or wanting a certain income by a certain time. And I've done some work through that after, kind of struggling with that. And I think I've kind of come to a place where I now really just try to follow that energy. And if I am, not feeling well, if I'm in like the yin half of my menstrual cycle and I don't want to do client work, then I just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Uh, and if things are pre-booked, then that's great. But I make a conscious effort to actually block that time off on my calendar so nobody can book into that space. And then if I have the surge of energy and I want to do something fun, I just throw it up on my Instagram. Like I had guidance to take down my reading offerings
Hmm.
earlier this year. So I got rid of all of my different reading offerings,
Oh, okay.
stopped doing Akashic readings, stopped doing tarot readings. And then for fun, when I, wanted to do a couple readings, I was able to just kind of like throw it up as this, um, I can't think of a better term other than ad hoc, even though it's very corporate speak.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense though. Yeah.
But that's the way that I was able to do it. So yeah, right now in business, I don't feel like I'm applying that same pressure to myself. And I wouldn't say that my client base is by any means booming. I think I'm still at the very beginning of things. And I think that there's a lot more, but the space has also lent itself to me creating different offerings that I'm really in love with,
Hmm.
and different things that, feel like they have a ton of energy behind them in the moment in time. I have very much leaned into my human design and I try to be at the urges of my creative whims. So when a creative urge lands for me and it's something that I can produce and share with the world and get it out there, then um, yeah, I really try to lean into that and to do that. So there's definitely been challenges, but I think they've been mostly self-imposed or really just expectations that have come from this like greater thought about what it means to have a business per se. And I actually even moved away from the word business and started using the word practice because
Okay.
that more aligned for me in terms of what it was that I was building.
I love that. And listen, I understand completely about that self-imposed pressure. And it's an unlearning, right? Like, I don't have to be that person who goes so hard until I crash. Especially as a projector, I should not be doing that because that is not who I am. So anyway, I completely understand what you're saying there about going with the flow of things when you feel energized by something or you're like, oh, I'm super passionate about that. I think I'm going to go do that. It's like, because when you feel passionate about something, it's going to attract what it's supposed to attract for you. So, yeah, it's a good place to be in. And also I hear that you recognize that you're in a fortunate position to be able to do that because there are a lot of people who are kind of, forced into that model of drive, even though they are in the spiritual space. And so that's unfortunate. I'm trying to find a way that I can help both sides, people who are in the flow of things versus people who are like really. Trying to get it going. So okay, let's see what else. And how are we on time? Okay, we've got a few minutes left. Let me just open this up and let you, if there's anything else that you want to share, because I really am open to having the direction of my practice. How about that? No, my business to be able to go in the way that it needs to go to help support connecting spiritually awakening souls to light worker practitioners. If you have any just off the cuff opinions or thoughts around what that might look like.
I think I spoke to it a little bit, but it really feels like there is maybe this element missing of somewhere that a trust can be built between the recipient and the practitioner. And that feels so abstract because it really is a hard thing to kind of nail down what that tends to look like. As I'm just sitting with it, like what is like literally just coming into me now as the ways that I've seen this done are from practitioners and really beyond practitioners and people that teach, having a kind of a platter of different offerings, if you will, and ways to work with those individuals, maybe at a more accessible price for someone, maybe cost is a barrier. So, building that trust is coming in at, like a $20 or $30 price point and getting to see how this practitioner does things or works with others. Or maybe that, looks like practitioners hosting group sessions so that recipients can really get a feel for, what their energy is like and, what skills they have. Like I think Amy is a great example, Amy Robeson.
Okay, yeah.
Because when we worked with her in terms of like the Akashic class, that gave me such a better understanding of her skill set and who she is as a person and a teacher and a spiritual guide. So really, I think there needs to be some level of visibility for people to see practitioners actually doing the work.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. I love that. Do you have a hard stop or can you go just a couple of minutes extra?
Yeah.
Okay. So I do have a question on the lines of like developing your skills as a practitioner. So, because we all like need to practice our craft, and so it looks different for different people, whether you just kind of find people off the street and you're like, hey, can I try out my Reiki on you? Or like, what, I guess what level of importance do you put on practitioners like really honing their craft before they start selling to clients? And again, in an ideal world, what would that look like for practitioners to be able to, I guess, not necessarily practice on people who are off the street, but like, how are they going to get their practice in? What would be a great scenario where people could feel confident in their development of their skills before they go out and sell to the masses?
Right. I'm going to answer the second question first. I think for me personally, I've leaned a lot on social for that. I find Facebook in particular, just because I find that there's a lot of groups with like people together, very similar intentions, very similar type goals. So something that kind of, again, like brings people with those likenesses together that people can then offer to practice for, whether that's doing, readings or energy work or whatever else it is. That feels to me like a really cool ideal way, because not only are the practitioners getting practice, is a recipient actually, receiving something, and likely for a low cost or for free if the practitioner is still in practice, if that's kind of the route that they've chosen to go, that they want to build their skills before offering their services at, a paid price, or maybe they're doing it by donation, something something that's a little bit smaller scale, accessible, that doesn't have this like huge investment piece towards it.
Yeah.
Feels like it could be really good for this like ideal space of creating that. And I think the other thing that I would say with that is I I would find it valuable for the recipients in particular to be people who are willing to give feedback.
Mm.
Practice all you want as a practitioner. I could do, 30 Reiki sessions before I start charging, but if nobody has really shared what their experience is with the session, either before, during, or after, I don't know what is working well for them as a recipient that I
Mm.
am doing, or I don't know what I'm lacking. So yeah, there's a lot of value in finding people who are willing to provide honest feedback,
Yeah.
whether it be constructive or whether it be, that was the most amazing session I've ever had type thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
And typically in that kind of scenario where, a practitioner is practicing, whether they're new or, experienced, whatever, if they're offering their service to say, look, very discounted or free or whatever, but the only thing I'm asking for is your feedback, seems like a win-win, for both the practitioner who's trying to develop their skills further, and then the client who is receiving healing.
yeah.
So,
So maybe on that then, because I find that that's where a lot of people kind of drop off. They receive the thing, whatever it is, and then there's kind of no follow up, kind of past that point, or it's something that's very hard to track, especially if you're working, like if you're finding people in random Facebook groups, like it's just that's hard to keep track of. So maybe the ideal space really looks like something that has a structure, for a feedback model.
mhm.
Um, I find actually like mediumship groups are super good about this and super strict on the feedback rule, uh,
Okay.
in particular. And I see a lot of like progress and development in those spaces, that I've kind of been immersed into. So maybe there's something to that about like the
Okay.
feedback, being like a mandatory piece, and some guidelines in terms of whether that be, like you have to follow up within a certain amount of days, or maybe you do multiple follow-ups for clients and see, like what did they notice a day after, a week after, a month after type thing, and
Yeah.
you can really get a fuller picture. I think that's where there's some benefit in working with people that because then you kind of have that continuous dialogue. But when you're working with a random person that you met on the internet, or that you were paired with on the internet in some capacity, it's really hard to kind of maintain that open conversation and that relationship. So yeah, I think there's something in there.
Absolutely, there is. And I want you to send me some of those groups, some of those mediumship groups that you're talking about, so that I can see what they're doing, to tap into that, feedback loop, like a structured feedback loop. Okay, very cool. You're so smart, so wise. Okay, so since we are past time, I do just want to allow you a second to tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, you can find me. I'm mainly on Instagram because millennial, at the.unseen.realm, or my website is the unseen realm, all one word, .ca. Yeah, those are kind of the two spaces that I update the most, but I'm all over, every social that you could think of. I have a Discord community that is kind of getting up and running with a really intimate amount of, members so far, that I'm hoping to kind of expand. And then, like I mentioned before, my Substack as well, where I kind of write and ponder all of these things, which has both its written portion and a podcast. So
Okay.
I'm hoping to bring a lot more to the podcast and really utilize my voice as a manifester, and all of my throat gifts. So, so
Absolutely.
that is in the works, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Okay, awesome. Well, I wish you all the best. It's always a pleasure to connect, and I know we will stay in close contact.
Thanks so much, Katie. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for your time. All right, bye-bye.